can sit on the throne in our hearts today, God. Come on, let's sing it together, church. Come on. So every knee will bow, every tongue confess that it's my joy to do it, Lord Jesus. Come on, we give you all the glory today, God. Come on, church, let's take a moment right here and give him all our praise, all of our worship. He's so deserving of our worship. Oh, be exalted today, God. Oh, be lifted high in this place. You are worthy, so worthy of all the worship.
What I see, that the grave is empty, then you know what I know. Anything is possible. Do you see what I see?
Welcome back, guys. I'm so excited to this video. This is something I wanted to do as like a condensed multi-video into just one. And so what I want to talk about is kind of a follow-up to my last one, which is me talking about doing a 6-unit wireless rack build and switching away from the pedal board. I've also talked about me switching away and moving to a new studio, into a new location. And as you can see, I am in that new location. And then I also wanted to kind of dive into what I'm doing now as a worship musician, using the Helix, using the new rack, and then using the new kind of setup we have at the new church. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about the rack real quick. The rack is officially done. It's taken about a few months to kind of get together of what I wanted to build it to, and I had to tweak a couple adjustments. But I am very happy that I went with the 6-unit rack. I wound up filling up the 4-unit very quickly, and then I needed to adjust and deviate in some plans. So let's go through what it is now, and then we'll talk about what I possibly might do in the future. So on the very top, we have the Furman power supply fitted with these awesome, cool pull-out lights and a dimmer on top, courtesy outlet on the front with 6 outlets on the back. Right below it, I have the Phoenix PTM 10 Pro wireless in-ear monitor. This thing is fantastic. I have the antenna put away for right now, just because I use the Line 6 a lot. The prior church I had did not have a in-ear wireless system. We had to do wired up, and so I wanted to kind of get away from that. And so this rack right now is being mainly used in the studio to kind of help get away from wiring on the desk, and I have a little bit more freedom and movement within the studio. Right below it is this G90 wireless guitar unit. This thing is an absolute beast. I know it's pretty old for when it came out. However, I got this on a crazy open box deal, and the thing is absolutely amazing. Between the 2 bands and the multiple channel scanning, I have had no issues with this thing, and I couldn't have been happier buying the unit. Now, for the longest time, I kind of stopped at those 3 units, and then I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with the last 3. I wanted a drawer system, but then I got the backpack for the Helix, and that really kind of mitigated what I needed in the drawer. What I did find out is I needed a drawer system just for the pedals, and I wound up getting this drawer pull-out system from Amazon for about $45, probably the cheapest you can find it. And I also needed to install a guitar tuner behind the stage for my new setup at the new church. The new pedal that I wanted to get needed to match with what I was doing with the Helix, and as you guys know from prior videos, I use Peterson Sweeten Guitar Tuning, and so the only company that does that is a Peterson company. So I wound up getting their strobe tuner. Over here I put the Variax battery charger, and then of course I pulled off the Voodoo power supply too from my old pedal board, put it back on here. Some of you might ask why that is. If I'm using the Furman, and if I'm using a lot of power supply, I want all the cables to be mitigated on just the board on the drawer instead of having wires galore behind me. For the time being, I think the only pedal I might actually expand on this would be the Digitech detune drop tune detune pedal, but we'll see what happens. I'm just trying to get away from the Variax just to use other guitars. On the back, I have a patch bay that I finished up. The patch bay has been very useful as far as quickly connecting to cables and getting set up instead of having to reach back into the compartment. Even as shallow as a 14-inch shallow case, it's still reaching into the cable and potentially pulling some stuff. So I've been pretty happy with that patch bay, and for the time being, this unit is pretty much it. It is pretty heavy. Before I had left, I'd bought a dolly, and basically my loadout is a miniature dolly with this on the top of the platform, Helix on top with the guitar, and that has made my load in, load out significantly easier without having to lug all this heavy equipment every which way. It's usually loaded on the dolly and then loaded on stage, and that's it. So I'm not really experiencing too much hassle for the weight of this crate. I would say if I had to estimate, it's probably somewhere around 35, 40 pounds. Nothing too crazy, but enough if you're carrying it from long distance, it's gonna be a pain in the butt. So that is my current rig over here. So let's talk about the Helix Backpack. I struggled with buying one of these for quite some time. $200 price point, I didn't think I would use it. Not having a pedal board and not having to have drawers, that Helix Backpack is so amazing. It is actually made, having all my gear, having tools, having extra parts, getting away from miscellaneous bags that I'm toting in with my gear, completely go down to zero. That backpack is quite amazing, and it's been an absolute joy to have it. I don't really see any flaws with it. The weather that I had to trek through, granted it wasn't been like downpouring complete flood, but it's blocked a lot of that extra crap that I've had to deal with. And for loading in quickly and getting stuff on the stage and not having to worry about banging the Helix, I highly suggest, if you guys are thinking about buying a Helix backpack and you do not use a pedal board whatsoever, it is the absolute investment for you guys. So the way I use mine is I put away the straps. I mainly use this as a briefcase. The very top portion up here, I mainly keep some cables for USB on the Helix in case I need to change something with a Variax. Change the strings, EBO, a couple slides, just miscellaneous desktop items that in case I want to pull out during rehearsal. This main component in here has been an absolute lifesaver. So I mainly keep in here my extra cables, my VDI cable. I'll have an iPad in here, some notes, I'll have batteries. And before I had the rack, I was keeping all my transmitters Velcroed in to kind of keep them safe. I also keep my guitar strap in here just to help mitigate a lot of the back and forth hustle of squeezing that and bending that thing. But overall, this thing is an absolute joy to carry. It does make the Helix weight, as little as it is, almost feel non-existent. And I do throw this thing around in the back of my pickup truck in the back seat. And so I don't really have a problem with it now, or have a risk of hitting something crazy. So again, absolute joy. I should have bought this thing way long ago. All right, so let's talk about the differences between the two churches. My prior church did not really mind about having a lot of stuff on stage. So often you would find a lot of cords, a lot of stands, a lot of music stands or iPad stands, or even have a stand for the in-ear mixers for the musicians. There's just a lot of stuff on stage. And for someone like me, if I was thinking about going to a guitar rack system like the Axe FX or even a Helix rack, it's perfect because I can see the rack, I can see my controller, and all is well. Luckily, I held back on buying those and I waited a little bit. When I swapped over to this new church, they have an extreme view of being minimalistic on stage. And it does look clean, I'm not gonna lie. So on stage, what you will find is you have the two platforms for piano and drums. You will have the guitar sections or the basses and the guitar player. Their rack will be shoved over to the platforms of left and right. So when the on-viewing stream is going on, you don't see guitars, you don't see effects, you don't see anything. And even when you come off on stage, there is no guitar cords on either player. Everything is wireless. What that meant for me is I had to run my entire rack unit behind stage for being wireless, which is fine. So what I found out I was doing was I have about 25 to 30 feet of guitar cable that I'm running to the Helix, to the rack, to run the wireless system and powering the rack itself from on stage. the other thing about that is it forces you to think about what you really need on stage and what you need behind stage. What I found out is I was constantly having an issue with tuning, whether it be I was slamming on the strings too hard, or if the temperature was dropping behind stage and it was throwing the tuning out of tune. I was starting to use my TC Electronics Poly Tuner, which is vastly different than the Sweeten guitar tuning. So no matter what, I was in pitch, but not the same pitch as I am expecting to go on stage, which is kind of, it raises anxiety. And as a musician player, you want to focus on worshiping and having fun. You don't want to add to your anxiety already. There's enough stuff that can go on with guitars and electronics and everything else. You don't want to add to that scenario. I initially thought I could get by and I could quickly tune on stage. But then, it just the anxiety starts building about not being in tune. I started playing a worship event. It was this last Easter, actually. And I went to go hit a chord, and it was completely out of tune on my D and E string. And it absolutely ruined the vibe for me on stage. And so to kind of rectify that, I know I needed something different. And for me, if I like the sweet guitar tuning, the only other approach to getting it is getting an actual Peterson strobe tuner, which I did. So I got the HD strobe tuner, the big one, has everything under the sun, any type of tuner, and I wound up having that off stage, behind the scenes, solely for me. So I know for a fact before I go out on stage that I could utilize that tuning, make sure I'm good, and when I go back on stage, if I need to do quick adjustments, I am not that far off the charts. And ever since I did that, it's been an absolute lifesaver. The anxiety did drop, the worry about not being in tune or hitting the wrong chords, and making sure that it sounded weird, but I know I'm on the right shape. That all completely went away, and it's crazy because it's been about 12 and a half years since I bought an actual guitar tuner, and I thought the Helix would be it for me. But ultimately, going to a new location and having different needs and having to have a different setup pushed me to have new equipment, and that means. But, especially when it comes down to intonation, I really do like the strobe tuner. I think it is one of the best tunings you can actually probably get. All right, so let's talk about the Variax, because it's been a while since I actually even talked about the Variax, put out a video about the Variax. It is still one of my most favorite guitars to play. Recently, I spent about close to almost a year using Ernie Ball hybrid strings. So you have your 9 set on the bottom, you have your 10 set on the low end and the top, and it made life pretty awesome. The only problem is that I bend the crap out of my strings, and I don't think I still hit the strings as heavy as I do, but I do. And if you ever have owned a Variax, even the technicians will tell you the guitar is meant and set up with the pickups on it to have 10s. It helps stay in tune better. It helps with the electronic and the digital tuning, all that fun stuff. I kind of strayed away from it to see how long I could go on it. And between the tuning issues and having the issues on stage and having the strings quite literally wear out within a weekend or 2 weeks of use, I wound up switching over to these new Paradigms set 10s. And the tuning issues completely went away. And that's even with the ratio tuners I've installed when I first got the guitar. And it is still my go-to guitar. I think it still sounds fantastic. I love the pickups built into it. I know a lot of people change out of them. I don't have a need to have or compare guitars, and I'm not swapping out on stage, so it's not that big of a deal. I do very often use the guitar swap out and the digital tuning all the time because we're changing keys very rapidly. And I would say that having the ability to do that type of guitar swap out or key changes on the Variax absolutely saves me DSP on my Helix. And I don't have to worry about adding that factor or removing some ability out of the Helix away so I can do that type of need. And I probably need to look at essentially getting down to a simplified Helix rig setup. But why? There's 2 DSP chips. And if I want to have the biggest, craziest sound, I want to be able to do that, playing simple and doing less, but actually sounding more. And so I use the Variax all of the time. And a matter of fact, I quite literally last weekend had to file down the frets and re-crown them because I was actually wearing into the frets already after almost 2.5 years of using the guitar. And so even that was a simple fix on that, and it completely was a brand new guitar to me again. So am I worried about the Variax being discontinued, and am I going to look at a new guitar? No, and I think I'll buy another one if I could, if this breaks, just because it actually is an amazing guitar, and I think it's sad they discontinued it. But it's just one of those guitars where I think I heard somebody else say it on a YouTube video. It is a fantastic second guitar because you don't need any other ones. You have your favorite guitar on stage, but you have the Variax because it is a great second guitar for everything you need. And so I use it all the time, and this is probably the new church that I'm going to is the most I've used the Variax without the VDI cable. And I thought I would always be tied to the VDI cable because I wanted to do multiple guitar changes, and I wanted to change up pickups and guitars all within snapshots. And it's really forcing me to look at tonality wise, how am I changing my snapshots and what am I playing as a musician versus letting the digital world do that for me. And so I'm so happy I was able to kind of get shoved away from the VDI and go wireless. So that's been an absolute joy. Now, for the last studio update I have not made a video yet with this guitar. And this is probably the first new guitar I bought since the Variax. And what makes this one absolutely special is a couple things. One, it's a Schecter, and I've always wanted a Schecter guitar. Just never found the reason to buy one yet. This one is fitted with their crazy humbucker pickups. They are split tapping, so it's pretty great. And then they have their unique Bigsby bridge built into it, which of all of my guitars, of all guitars that I have, this is the most worship guitar looking ever. And there is quite a lot set up required for the Bigsby to kind of fine tune it, making sure there's a couple rules that go along with having a Bigsby. But not having to utilize a vibrato or some real effect on the Helix and focus really having everything on a guitar, it's such an amazing guitar to play with. And I have never been a big fan of using tremolo-based bridges ever. Even when I had a Strat, even with my Floyd Rose Rainy Road guitar. I just have never had a need to use it until I started playing worship. And then I thought about, getting a Gretsch. And I was like, yeah, it's just not my feel. But with this guitar, I have the feel of what my Dean Evo feels like. Even a Strat from like a Fender. But I have a kind of Bigsby feel built into this guitar. And it plays absolutely amazing. I wound up getting this on a guitar trade with one of my older guitars, and he had one, I had one. We just did a straight up trade on it. And I would say for me personally, I made up better because I play this guitar more than my older one that I traded with. And so you guys will start seeing this guitar very, very soon in some guitar covers, and I look forward to you guys using it. But you also might have already saw this from the intro of the video of me using on stage. So it actually has become my easy number 2 on stage, and I've played the Alpine Epiphone Les Paul recently. And so I'm starting to find that I'm actually cycling guitars properly. And but this clearly is become my number 2 favorite, at least for this little bit of time.